Welcome to another coding tutorial, and in today's video, I'm going to show you how you can make this interactive secret message. This piece is inspired by an interactive installation called Bigger that is made from 264 books for an art book fair in Shenzhen, China. And I found it on the Type01 Instagram account, which actually has a bunch of really cool art and type stuff which you can check out. And as you can see here, it is essentially a grid of rectangles with a specific number of rows and columns, and when you flip the books you can change the colors, and I was really inspired to do that on our screen. This tutorial is also great for you to see how, when you experiment with different variables, changing colors here and there, that you can create happy accidents or an end result that you don't expect, which I will show at the end of the video. So make sure you stick around. How we're going to approach this is that first we're going to create a grid of rectangles. Then we're going to import an image that says bigger and then extract the brightness value of that image. And we're going to color the rectangles using that. I'm going to be using object-oriented programming. Then at the end, we're going to introduce some interactivity. So first, let's create a grid of rectangles. We're going to do that by declaring 4 variables: columns, rows, and then the column size and the row size. So I'm going to call it C size and R size. We're going to give an initial value for C size, let's do 40, and then R size to be 50. So it's a rectangle, now it's not a square. And then inside the setup function, we're going to calculate the number of columns and rows. So we can do that by dividing width by C size, so column size, and then rows by R size. And then now I'm going to draw the grid. And we can do that inside the draw function by using a nested for loop. I less than cols, I plus plus, let j equals to 0, j less than rows, j plus plus. And then we're going to use a rect function to draw each of the rectangle in the grid. And the rect function takes in a total of 4 arguments. The first 2 are the x and y location of the top left corner of the rectangle. So it's going to be I times C size, j times R size. And then the third and the fourth arguments are the width size and the height size of that rectangle. So it's going to be C size and R size. If you're not familiar with this process right now, you can check out my video on nested for loops. All right, so let's just run. Okay, so now we have a grid of rectangles. I want to first change the size of my canvas to 800 by 200 first. Next, we're going to import an image that says bigger, and then we're going to extract the brightness value and then color these rectangles here. So you have to come to this arrow here, and then you're going to create a folder. I'm going to call this folder images. And then we're going to upload a file, and you can just do it easily by dragging an image that you want into here. And I've created an image that says bigger that I'm going to use. Okay, so we can go back to sketch.js. Now we're going to prepare an image and then upload it. We're going to create a new variable called img and going to use a function called preload. This is a function where you preload this image onto our sketch. And then we're going to set the img variable to a function called load image. And inside this load image function, you're going to give an argument of where the image is. And you're going to put it inside a quotation mark here. And where is it? So if you come back to this section here, it is in a folder called images, and the image is called bigger.png. So that's what you need to put. So images and then backslash bigger.png. To make sure that we upload this image properly, I'm going to display an image on our sketch. You can use a function called image, and then inside here, what you need to put in is the name of your file, img, and then the top left corner of where you want to display the image, and I want to display it at 0, 0. So it will start here and then display the whole canvas. So let's click play. All right. So if your image is not of the size of your canvas, what you can do is that you can resize your image. So I'm just going to show you how to do that. Basically, you just put in the name of your file and then the function called resize. So your file dot resize. And inside the argument here, what you want to set is you want to give an argument of what is the size of the width that you want. So let's say we want to resize it by half. So right now our width is at 800, so I'm going to put 400 here. And for the second argument, you can also put in the height that you want. But if you want it to shrink or like to resize proportionate to the default ratio of your image, you can just put in 0. So let's say I put in 0 here and then click run. So you can see that it's resized proportionately. But let's say if I put in 200 here, so it's only resizing the width, right? But because my image is of the correct size, I don't need this. So let's just click play. Next, we're going to extract the color value and then get a brightness value from that color and then use that brightness value to color our grid. Let's create a new variable, called it bright. To create a 2D array, we need another nested for loop. And I have done this in several tutorials already, so I'm going to link some of those in the description so you can check out if you're not familiar with this process. So inside the outer for loop, you want to first create a bunch of empty 1D arrays, right, to the number of columns here. And then in the inner for loop, you're going to store the information that you want to store for each of the rectangle here. So what information do we want to store? We want to store the brightness information, right? But before we can store the brightness information, first we're going to get the color information of each of the pixels first. I'm going to declare a variable called C, and then C is going to be set to the image file dot get. Inside this get function, you can put in an argument of what coordinate of each of the pixel on our canvas here that we want to get the color information. So I'm going to put I and J here. And essentially with I and J, it is extracting color information of the top left corner pixel of each of the rectangle here, which I'll show you. So let me first comment this line out and then let's print C. So as you can see here, these are the color value, right? So you can see it's 255, 255, 255, so that's white. And then the fourth argument is actually the transparency, the alpha value. Wait, why is it all white? Oh, it's not I, comma J. What we need is I times C size and J times row size. If I just put I and J, it's just extracting the color information of the first rectangle. So now it's I times C size and J times R size. So let's try that. All right, that looks better. So it has some white colors and then some black colors, right? 0 and 255. Then it has some that is not white and not black, some gray values, which is fine. Okay, but we don't want just the color information, we want the brightness information. So what we need to do is we need to get the brightness value. I'm gonna do that by actually just print it out just to show you. So if we do brightness, and then inside the brightness function, we put in the color value. So it's gonna be C, and then if I print this out, all right, so the brightness value ranges between 0 and 100, 0 being black and then 100 being white. So you can see here that we have a value of 0 and 100. And these values here, that is not 0, 100, are the color values that you saw before that were gray, right? So, okay, so once we have this, now we know that we want to put in the brightness information inside our bright 2D array. So I'm going to delete this print function here. And then we're going to put in brightness of C. We're going to use the values that we store inside the bright 2D array to fill our rectangle or to color our rectangle, but we don't want to just fill in the values between 0 and 100, right? So this is a little bit silly what I'm doing right now, but it will make sense when we create an object. But I'm gonna map this value from 0 to 100 to 0 to 255. And this is silly because the color value that we had initially is already between 0 and 255, right? But it will make sense later. So inside this fill function, we're going to put in bright of I and j. Okay. So as you can see here, it doesn't read bigger, right? And that is because, let me just do this. So let me show the image again, and I'm going to put in the transparency for the fill function here at 100. And then I'm going to put this image before the nested for loop. So the image is before the rectangles. So as you can see here, why are these rectangles black? So we're extracting the color value of the top left corner of each of these grid, right? So you can see that this grid is white, this one is white, even though there's some black here, but the extraction cannot tell. So we just do white, 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 but then in this rectangle here, at the top left corner of this rectangle, it's black, right? And that's why this specific rectangle is black. Same goes for this one, and for this one, and for this one. So what we can do is that we can, instead of giving the column size and the row size at 40 and 50, what if we make it smaller to 4 and 5? So make it more dense. And then now let's just delete this. It reads the word bigger now, which is nice. That's what we want. But now everything is inside this nested for loop. I want to instead actually create an object for each of these rectangles. It's going to help us store all the information of what we're going to do with that rectangle a lot easier when we have an object. All right, so come here and you want to create a new file, and let's call it Rect.js. And then you want to go to index.html file first to actually tell the computer that, hey, we have created a new file and please integrate it into our program. So you're going to copy this line of code and change the name from sketch to the name of your file. So in my case, it's rect.js. And now we can go back to this rect.js file. To create a class, first we use the word class, and then I'm going to name it rect for the rectangle class. Then I'm going to write a constructor function. Inside the constructor function, I'm going to introduce two parameters, x and y. Then this x equals to x, and then this y equals to y. So this is just the x and y coordinates of the top left corner of our rectangle object. And then I'm going to write a display method to display our rectangles. So fill, let's put the argument as this.c, and then we're going to put this.c here as well. So this is another parameter. We're going to draw a rectangle at this.x and this.y, and then the width and the height will be the global variables c size and r size. All right, so let's go back to the sketch.js page. Let's just make sure that our rectangle class works. I'm going to create a new variable called rects, and inside this same nested for loop, let's create a 2D array rect. All right, so rects is a new rectangle object, right? And we're going to put it at I times C size, J times C size. And then the third parameter, third argument is going to be the brightness information, right? So actually, we don't need the bright to the array anymore. What we need is we need this right here. So instead of putting it or storing it in the bright to the array, we're going to just create a new variable called bright. So I'm going to delete all of this. And then we're going to put that value inside our new object. And then now inside this nested for loop, we don't have to put these two lines of code. What we need is that we need to call the display function. Rect.display. Okay, I hope this works. Oh, Rect of I and j, right? Because it's a 2D array and we are displaying each of the rectangle objects. Nice. Okay, but something is wrong here. Oh, okay, this is our size. Alrighty. So now we have created a rectangle object and we display each of the rectangle objects on here that uses the color or the brightness information of the original image that we have imported. Perfect. Next, what we're going to do is that first I want to change a few things. I want the stroke weight to be lighter. So let's do 0.5. The default stroke weight is 1. And as you can see in our canvas right now, there are some gray values, right? Kind of around the perimeter of each of the letter. And I really don't want that. I just want black or white to be a very clean type image. So instead of inputting in a color information or the brightness information here, I'm going to first delete this and set it to initialize the value to 0. And I'm going to create a new parameter called isBlack. And isBlack is going to be a Boolean variable that is either true or false. So it's going to tell me whether it is white or it is black. Okay, and inside the display function here, I'm going to say if this dot is black is true, so it is black, then this dot c is going to be 0. Else, so other than black, then it is going to be white. So this is a way for us to eliminate all of the gray values. And then now we have to come back to sketch.js. So now we're not only just putting in the bright values here, right? What we're going to do is that we're also going to create a conditional statement that say if brightness of C is equals to 0, then let bright be equals to 0. Else, let bright be equal to 255. I'm not sure if I can declare it twice like this. Let's just try it. Bright is not defined. So let's define bright outside here and then delete let here. What did I do wrong? If bright is... Oh, we don't want to set this, right? This bright argument here is either true or false. So if it is black, then set it to true. If it is not black, then set it to false. Ta-da! There you go. So now we get this either just black or white value. So it's so much cleaner. Nice. All right, so that's the first step that we can display an image. Now let's go to the interactivity part. So how are we going to make it interactive? We're going to make it interact with the mouse, right? The mouse location. Let's go back to Rect.js. We're going to create a new method and I'm going to call it mouse hover. Inside mouse hover, I'm going to create a new variable called distance. Basically, I'm going to calculate the distance between the mouse location and the x and y coordinate of the top left corner of each of the rectangles. And if the distance is less than a specific pixel amount, then we're going to do something. So let's first calculate the distance. So let distance equals to dist between the 2 points. So distance between 2 points. What points? So this.x and this.y. And the mouse location, right? So mouse x and mouse y. And the dist function here, dist, is a function within p5.js that calculates the distance between 2 points. And once we have this, we want to write a conditional statement. And what kind of condition do we want to do? So for a secret message, what I want to do is that first I want the whole canvas to be black. And then where the mouse is close to the rectangle, then I want to display the image. So first, let's write a conditional statement. So if distance is less than, let's say, 50, then if this dot is black is true. So I also want to only display where the word bigger is, right? So that's where is black is true. Then this dot c will become white. And then we need to call this function. So to call a method inside the class, all you need to do is write the word this and then the name of the function. There you go. But because we have this conditional statement here, it does display this as white, right? Where the image is white. So we can comment this out first. So now everything is black because this.c has an initial value of black. And then now we can display this image. All right, so this is the first way that we can do. Now let's experiment. What I want is that once the mouse is not there anymore, I want the image to disappear. So let's go back to mouse hover again. I'm gonna write another conditional statement. So if this dot c is more than 0, right? So that's where the word bigger is when we put the mouse near that rectangle. Then I want this dot c to decrement by 10. So let's try this. You can kind of see the trail, right? All right, that's pretty cool. Okay, but what if you don't want to see the trail like this? You just want it to go back to black where the mouse is not near the rectangle. Then we can come back to this line of code here. So basically, we don't need this second part. But where this is black is true, then set it back to black. And then you call that every time, right? And then this mouse hover function is being called afterwards, but we resetting the value of color to black every time it's called. So let's try this one. Okay, so this gives it like a flashlight effect. Okay, what else do we want to explore? What if we instead write another conditional function, an else function here. So let's say that we want to set it to black when it's true, and else set it to white. Let's try this. So that gives a different look, right? Here, let's experiment with this piece. What if we uncomment this out? Whoa. See, once you have the base code down, now you can really experiment with lots of different effects based on the conditions that you want. Now the size is at 50. What if we change it to, let's say, 20? I did like the bigger one more. It gives me more of like a flashlight effect. Oh, this is so cool. All right, before we end here, I just want to get a little bit closer to the original inspiration of the bigger interactive installation. I am going to comment this piece out. Instead of setting this to white, I'm going to set it to the color of a cool color palette. So I'm going to create a new variable called colors, and colors is going to be equals to an array of colors that I already have here of this color palette. And then inside the constructor function, I want to create a new, let's call it random color. And random color is going to give me a random index value that we're gonna generate every time we call, or every time we create a new rectangle object. So let's do random of 7. So random of 7 is going to give me a value between 0 and 6.99999, but because it's an index value, I can't use a float value, so I need to use another function called floor, and floor is going to give me the closest integer, so it's going to be between 0 and 6. So now this dot c is going to be equals to color of the array colors and then the index of this dot random color. Let's try that. There you go. Okay, that is the opposite of what the original image is. So let's instead of, so this will be switched with this one. So this will be this, and then else this dot c is going to be equals to 0. Let's try this. Black. And there you go. So the closest one actually might be if we comment this out. So it's kind of like this painting, this image, right? All right. So this is close to the bigger image that we had. I'm really glad to be showing you this tutorial because this is how fun it is to experiment with your code. Even though you have this original idea of what you want to make, as you are making or coding this sketch or this piece, you slowly experiment and then you come up with new ideas, and then, you know, some happy accidents happen, and then you end up with something quite amazing. And it's really fun to experiment and to just really come up with new ideas. And it is as simple as just changing variables here and there, right? So it's nothing too complicated, but the end result is pretty spectacular. So I hope that you can give this one a try, experiment, and share with me what your end results look like. Give it a try.